The Darkening Tide, a scary camping story. Subscribe to Another World for great videos to relax, study, or just enjoy. It was supposed to be a simple family getaway. The ocean air, the salty breeze, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore. This was exactly what the Kellers needed after months of stress. They packed their camping gear, eager for a peaceful weekend at a secluded beach, far from the chaos of the city, a place where they could unwind and forget about the world. The spot they found was perfect. The beach was tucked away, with only a few other campers in the distance, barely visible over the dunes. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, the horizon a deep, fading blue. Sarah Keller, her husband Mark, and their two children, Emily and Jacob, set up their tent as the sun began its slow descent into the sea. They built a small fire and roasted marshmallows, laughing together under the darkening sky. But as the night crept closer, a strange feeling settled over them. It wasn't immediate, not a sudden shift, but more like an invisible presence that slowly draped itself over the campsite. The laughter dwindled, and an uneasy silence took its place. Sarah noticed it first, a chill in the air that didn't come from the ocean breeze. "Do you guys feel that?" she asked, rubbing her arms. Mark looked up from the fire. "Feel what?" "I don't know," she said, glancing around. "It's like something's off." Emily, their 12-year-old, gave a nervous chuckle. "Like what, Mom? You're freaking me out." Jacob, who was only 8, was staring out at the waves, unusually quiet for someone who was always full of energy. Mark shrugged, trying to ease the tension. "It's probably just the wind, or maybe we're not used to being out here in the dark like this." But Sarah wasn't convinced. It wasn't just the wind. There was something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. The darkness around them seemed thicker than it should be, and the sounds of the beach, normally soothing, felt eerie, as if the ocean itself was whispering something they weren't meant to hear. As the evening wore on, the sensation only grew stronger. Every rustle in the bushes, every shift of the wind felt like a warning. Sarah glanced at Mark, who had his back turned, tending to the fire. She opened her mouth to say something, but stopped. She didn't want to sound paranoid. Maybe it was just her imagination. But then Jacob spoke, his voice low and barely audible. "I don't like it here." Everyone turned to look at him. "What do you mean, buddy?" Mark asked, frowning. Jacob didn't answer right away. He stared out at the water, his small face pale in the firelight. Finally, he whispered, "It's too quiet." Mark and Sarah exchanged a glance. "What do you mean, Jacob?" Sarah asked softly, kneeling beside him. "The waves," Jacob said, his eyes wide and fearful. "They're too quiet. And someone's watching us." A cold shiver ran down Sarah's spine. She looked around again, trying to see what Jacob was talking about, but there was no one. Just the darkness and the faint outline of the dunes in the distance. "Maybe we should pack up and head out early tomorrow," Mark suggested, sensing the growing unease in the group. But Sarah shook her head. "No, I think we should leave now." Mark stared at her. "Now? It's the middle of the night." "I don't care," she said, standing up. "I don't feel right about this place. Something's wrong." Emily, who had been sitting quietly, suddenly stood as well. "Mom's right. I've felt it too since we got here. It's like we're not alone." Mark sighed, clearly torn between staying and leaving. But something in Sarah's voice made him hesitate. He had always trusted her instincts, and right now, those instincts were screaming. "All right," he said, standing up and dusting off his hands. "Let's pack up. We'll head out." They began hurriedly packing their gear, throwing things into bags with little care for organization. The tension in the air was palpable, and even though none of them could explain why, they all knew it was time to go. As they worked, the sensation of being watched grew stronger. Sarah kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone, or something, lurking in the shadows just beyond the firelight. But there was nothing. Just the suffocating darkness. They loaded everything into their car, their movements quick and frantic. As Mark zipped up the last bag, they all froze. A deep, rumbling sound echoed through the night. At first, it was distant, almost imperceptible over the sound of the waves. But then it grew louder, a low, guttural growl that made the ground beneath their feet tremble. "What is that?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Mark's eyes darted around, trying to locate the source of the noise. It was coming from behind the dunes, from somewhere deeper inland. "We need to leave," Sarah said, her voice rising with panic. "Now!" They piled into the car, Mark fumbling with the keys, as the rumbling grew louder, closer. Just as he started the engine, the headlights illuminated something cresting over the dunes. A massive truck, its engine roaring as it barreled towards them. "Go! Go!" Sarah screamed, clutching Jacob and Emily in the back seat. Mark floored the gas pedal, and the car lurched forward just as the truck came crashing through their campsite. The ground shook as the truck plowed through where their tent had been, crushing everything in its path. For a split second, Sarah caught a glimpse of the truck's driver, a dark figure, faceless in the shadows. And then they were speeding away, the truck disappearing into the darkness behind them. The family didn't stop driving until they reached a gas station miles away from the beach. They sat in the car, breathing heavily, trying to comprehend what had just happened. "What the hell was that?" Mark whispered, his hands shaking as he gripped the steering wheel. Sarah didn't answer. She was staring out the window, her mind racing. It wasn't just the truck. It was everything. The eerie silence, the overwhelming sense of being watched, the feeling that something terrible had been lurking just out of sight. And then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed with a news alert. She opened it, her heart skipping a beat as she read the headline. "Truck driver killed in high-speed chase near coastal campground." The article detailed how a man had stolen a truck earlier that evening and had led police on a wild chase through the back roads. He had lost control of the vehicle and crashed near a remote beach campsite, the campsite they had just left. Mark glanced over at Sarah as she read the news, his face pale. "If we hadn't left when we did." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. They had escaped by mere minutes, but as they sat in the gas station parking lot, one thought lingered in the back of her mind. Who, or what, had warned them to leave?